when this boy meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets Book.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your boy Meets World Fancast. I'm Siege.
And I'm your boy, Tony Curtis.
So I want to see, this is episode 40.
Ayo, we're here. We're doing
40th episode. And not only are we out here doing this, I actually wanted to take a moment. Dude, we've been doing this for over a year.
Wow.
Right?
We've been analyzing Boy Meets World for over a year, guys.
Yeah, actually,
I don't
honestly,
regret a second.
No, I mean, but I was looking it over and I was like, wow, it's been like a full year of us doing this. And we're on episode 40. That's crazy.
It's funny too because we fooled around with podcasts. This is probably like the fourth podcast we've actually landed on.
Yeah.
But we were practicing podcast stuff for months before even Bruh Meets World got started. So it's just interesting to see that we've been doing this a long time. Well, I think it's nice. We've learned a lot. Obviously, audio is still a question. We've learned a lot about just podcast structure and just how to make segments and things like that. So it's just all a great learning experience. Just like Boy Meets World, y'all.
Absolute. Okay, so how you been? Let's just check in for a second.
And I'll bring this up a little bit later during my homework. But I saw Halloween, the new one, recently.
Don't say anything. I'm watching it tonight. I'm literally watching it tonight at 8 p.m.
I don't want to say anything that...
Shut up. I don't want anything. I don't want anything. I want nothing. I don't want the slightest hint of how you feel about it. Move on.
Can I give you just a recap of the plot?
If the plot is the recap of the plot.
It's so vague, but it's just a point that I want to make about something outside of Halloween.
Okay,
which is,
keep going.
And I'll tread lightly because I respect not wanting to have an opinion. But the movie is about a woman who was attacked 40 years ago, who has stayed silent, and has now finding the courage to
fight back,
confront her attacker.
Yes,
who just happens to be an old white man.
Correct.
So that aspect of it is so and that's kind of what I love about horror movies in general, is that I feel that horror, more than any other genre, is a real mirror to what society is going through at any particular time. Like when you think about Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the original Halloween, these movies sprouted up right after Charles Manson and all of these crazy cult stuff that was happening in the 60s. And, we kind of see that happening over and over again with horror. Saw and Hostel coming up during the Iraq War and after 9/11, it's all kind of mirrored stuff. And we see that happening now with Purge and a few other things. But this is so of the moment. And I think that's just kind of the biggest, wow, this couldn't have been more released at a better time, and it just happens to be the 40th anniversary of the movie. So just very cool stuff.
Wow, that's fantastic. Oh, what? 40th anniversary on the 40th episode? Are we doing this?
What?
Let's
walk right into that.
Yeah, right? It's funny that you say that because I think I've mentioned this before, but I heard the study that said the exact same thing as you were talking about, which is that certain themes in horror show up under certain waves in American pop culture. For example, zombies are always really popular during a Republican head, because of the fact that from the left side, everyone's just zombies, and they're just following with the crowd, and they're not really thinking of their own. And then whenever there's a liberal in charge, vampires get really big because of the fact that all the kids are seen as lustful and just giving into their whims, and no one's really thinking about long term. So those ways,
that's an interesting theory.
Yeah, you can literally mirror it, but the exact same thing is witches. Witches become a really big deal whenever there's a feminist movement. And right now we have the whole
Well,
Me
yeah,
Too movement and all this other stuff. And Sabrina the Teenage Witch is coming back. Charmed is back. So yeah, it's you're right. Then it all mirrors.
yeah, and when the women's movement happened in the '70s, we had like Suspiria. Have you ever seen that movie?
I've never seen
So
that.
it's about witches in the ballet, and it is. I think they're doing a remake of it, and it's just a
Of course
wild,
they are.
crazy old movie. Um, but yeah, just horror movies. I'm loving it. It's Halloween. I'm digging it. I'm digging this
You
time of
could
year.
literally tell me that you made a remake of any movie in the world, and I believe you. I wouldn't probably agree, but I believe you.
And it's just, and you know what's sad is that I feel like there's so many great original horror movies that have come out in the last like few years with like Babadook and It Follows and just a few of these other indie movies that I was just like, man, it sucks that we have to keep doing these reboots and
Well,
reimaginings or whatever.
okay, you know what's great about this conversation?
What?
What's great about this conversation is it's just two guys on the air talking about their lives, and that segues us into this episode, which
We
I
don't
thought
have to
was
do lunchtime lust to get people's attention, you know.
we don't have to do that. Maybe if we did lunchtime lust, that we would get more attention. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess maybe perhaps.
Okay, but yeah. So this episode, what'd you think about it? And do you want to get into
I
talking
think
about
that
it
this
first?
episode is just saying a really broad statement of it. I think it's hilarious. I've always thought this episode was so funny. I don't think there's a lot of meat on the bones as far as like what our podcast typically does, as far as
Yeah,
analyzing how it ages compared to the time period in which it was released. But from a perspective of just a fan of the show and a fan of the actors of the show, they just give such hilarious performances. And it's just funny all around. So I think that's probably my biggest takeaway.
yeah. Okay. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. Tell me about it.
Tell me about it.
This is season 2, episode 17, on the air. When Feeny and Me starts the school radio show, Corey and Sean complain to Turner, who encourages them to be the change they want to hear on the radio. The boys begin their own show, adhering to the Feeny's guidelines, but find an audience by hooking girls up with guys who call in. Feeny, of course, shuts down the show, but the boys won't be tamed. They hijack the radio show and are back on the air until they are caught by Feeny and Turner. When asked why the boys betrayed Turner's trust in order to make their own show, Corey explains that having the show made them feel less lost. Unknowingly, Turner has broadcast their confession to the entire school, and the boys learn that just talking the truth is what helps them relate to others. In a B storyline, Eric tries to get rich quick.
You know what's funny is that I think this is the first real episode where I was like, wow, they're making Eric dumber.
Yes, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. This is the first episode where you see you're like, oh, okay, so this is where they've decided that Amy literally calls Eric special.
Yeah, she makes a Forrest Gump joke about.
Go ahead and scuff if you will. I got a good feeling about this one. See, there's a little voice inside my head. You know what it's saying?
Life is like a box of chocolates?
What?
Never mind, sweetheart. You just go wait by that front door for Robin Leach.
And it's so
When she
interesting
said that, I was
because
like, wow. And to be fair, his mama did say it. It was his mama.
yeah, it was. And it's so interesting because it's like I don't know that we've ever up until this episode have seen it's I'm trying to word this properly. Eric is dumb, and it seems like everyone on the show knows that he's dumb. Yet we, as an audience, haven't seen anything that would make us go, "He's Forrest Gump." You know what I mean? Like I think that's what
Yeah.
was strange.
I think for me, what the what's funny is at this point in time, it's just played off that in the beginning, it was always played off that Eric was just boy or girl crazy. So it's like, yeah, he is dumb, but it's like that's because he's preoccupied with girls. This is the
Yeah.
first time we get like a really big step back, and they're like, no, Eric's just not that bright in general.
Yeah, he's not bright, and everyone seems to understand that he's not bright. But again, it's sitcom dumb. It's
Yeah.
Joey Tribbiani dumb. He's not like so dumb that he can't function, but he's just dumb enough to not get the joke or to understand why
Joey
he's funny.
Tribbiani dumb. I love it so much. That's
It
so
is. It's
accurate.
sitcom
That
dumb.
is, I said that's the exact thing.
Sitcom dumb is like it's dumb enough for a joke to happen, but you're not concerned for like why is this person allowed to drive a car? Like it's not that.
Yeah,
Like
here's the thing,
situation.
because usually we allow them to be sexual, and you're right. If they were too dumb, we were like, well, this is just taking advantage of a person. You can't let them have sex. But if they're like,
I
just
hate
dumb
I
enough,
hate
you're
to
like,
reference Tropic Thunder, but you can't go full. You can't go full.
see, my whole yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. And then also, I hate that movie so much. But continue.
I also hate that movie. I don't know why.
I don't
posted
understand
just
why
now because
everyone-
I really hate it.
I hate that movie, and I hate the fact that everyone uses that movie as like an excuse to be like, "Well, what about Robert Downey Jr.?" I was like, "That is a terrible thing. I don't know why he gets a pass. I don't find it that funny, but that's just me. So whatever."
You know what's? It's so funny that you talk about him getting a pass for that because I actually had the same question about the boys at the end of this episode because to me, they get off with bare minimum sentencing.
Oh, absolutely.
For something that I feel like if they got suspended or even expelled for what they did, I'd been like, all right, I guess I get it. I understand. Truthfully, like it's
no. I'm not disagreeing with you, but yeah, that makes sense.
and so there was kind of a big question for me at the end of this episode was, you know, how much of this is white privilege that they're able to have these mistakes over and over again, directly disobey a principle, you know, form a rogue radio station and interrupt school for the day. Like all of that is so over the top, yet their punishment seems minimal.
Yeah, it's really funny that you mentioned specifically white privilege because I I made a little note, and let me see if I can find it. But it said something along the lines of you never see no one talks more about the Constitution than a white guy trying to justify why he wants to break the rules.
Yeah. Or why
No.
he gets to say something that's super
Yeah,
offensive.
Exactly. No one knows the Constitution better than a white man who's just trying to, or sorry, they don't really know it because, as proven with Sean and Corey a little bit, they don't really know what the First Amendment's about, but they know that the First Amendment says something along the lines that they have the freedom to do what they want to do, and they just keep spouting that.
Well, I mean, Sean even says to like that Feeney, he went against the first commandment.
Yeah,
Like he doesn't know the difference between the Bill of Rights and commandments.
Exactly. And you know what's really sad? I guarantee you a lot of other people don't either. If
Yeah.
you did like one of those BuzzFeed quizzes on like, is this a Ten Commandment or the Bill of Rights? I guarantee you a lot of Americans would not be, you would not be
See?
happy with it.
Sean, he says one thing and does another. He's being a hypochondriac.
Yeah, that was stupid, but so funny.
That's
Okay,
all this episode is dumb jokes like that, and I love it.
Exactly. We got to do a roll call. I was about to go
Roll
into
call,
it.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
do roll call. Roll call. Okay, so roll call. First of all, we do get Alvin Meese a little bit. He's
I have a
back.
issue with Alvin.
Tell me what you feel about Alvin.
So the last time we saw Alvin, he was running for class president against
Correct.
Corey and Sean,
Correct.
for 8th grade class president, which we learned was next year. However, at the midpoint, at the end of the second act of this episode, they go up to Alvin and they're like, "Hey, you set up the radio center, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." He's like, and Corey says, "All right, well, let's go see how a junior does it." I'm sorry, I thought Alvin was in the 7th grade because he was running for class president next year. How is he a junior now?
No. He said, let's see how Junior's doing. Meaning, like, because he said it's kind of like my baby. And he was like, all right, so let's see how Junior's doing.
I see. Okay. I misinterpreted that. Because for a second I was like, there's no way they're making him a junior now. Like that, they can't do that. All right.
No.
So that.
Yeah, no. But I mean, like, that makes sense. And I like that you brought that out. So what I was going to say is we have Alvin Meese. And then the next in line, we have Sarah Farmer. like Farber, Farber, something like that. Of course, as usual, the new people that we get are girls who aren't really fleshed out because we have Sarah Farber and we have Jasmine Fontana, and that's the end of
Jasmine
our roll.
Fontana.
If that's not her name, then it should be. Which I don't understand what that means.
I don't know what it means either. I think it just means that like because her name kind of sounds like fun, like fine, like '90s Monica, like fine.
Okay.
That's how I interpreted it, anyways.
Okay, cool.
So I do want to say one thing about the ginger chick. What was her name?
Her name is that would be Sarah Farber.
Okay, so Sarah, I believe, is the girl that I mixed up for the ginger in the last episode that we found out was from Alex Mack from the Danes episode. I confused them because I do believe that this ginger is the one that is in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show, and that's how I know her. I don't know why Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show, played such evidently a big part of my childhood.
Here's the thing. This is you, so if you notice, I never question you. I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. That's a very TC reference, and I'm not gonna.
Her name is, the actress's name is Hilary Tuck, by the way. She's been in a bunch of stuff. She's been in Grey's Anatomy in Plain Sight.
I do love a good Grey's Anatomy. I mean, but like Grey's Anatomy now is like Law and Order SVU. It's like you were on an episode if you were acting at some point in time.
Yeah, totally. And also, these shows I don't feel like are ever gonna go away.
Oh no, absolutely not. I don't understand, and I'm really. This is like, of course, so random, but like, I just don't understand how we have so many medical shows. Like, why are we
so many
always
procedural cop shows? They're like,
yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
At least SVU has a thing like, all right, I know that when I'm watching SVU, I'm gonna see rape, I'm gonna see kids, I'm gonna see all the nitty gritty. Like honestly, like they make the best episodes because it's always the most extreme stuff. I found semen in this victim's ear canal. Like that's crazy shit. Like that's what I want to see. But
so first of all, nice John Mulaney reference.
Yeah, of course. But like
CSI
and all of those things, like I don't see what's different between them, truthfully.
Like I don't either. So there's that, and then also I was gonna say that I've gotten into a lot of Food Network shows. And like as much as I'm like, I don't understand what the difference is between all these cop shows. Food Network shows, they can have like My Best Guacamole, and like each contestant comes and makes their own version of guacamole, and I will watch that for hours.
Did you say that you were on an episode of Chopped?
I was never on an episode of no, I've never been on an episode of Chopped. What I said was I was watching an episode of Chopped.
Oh, okay.
And this woman was literally like, she lost and she was like really upset. She had already talked about like how big of a deal it was for her to be there. And she got eliminated. She's like, yeah, I'm sad and everything, but you know what? I'm not going to cry about it and like stay in this place. And I was like, okay, first of all, I've cried over way worse. I mean, way less. You had like a lifelong dream destroyed and you're like, just fine, I'm going to move on. I was like, that's not me at all. And that was the whole purpose of that.
It's so interesting, the Chopped concept, because it's essentially just a game show. Like, it's no different than Jeopardy, except you just have to make something, and it seems like the stakes are so much higher.
Yeah.
Like, these people, their whole lives depend on how well they do on Chopped.
Oh, almost all the time. They're just like, my father is dying of cancer, and we have to pay the bill, so this money is really going to help me pay to
yeah, it's like, either I win, or you just killed my dad, Food Network.
And at the exact same time, Food Network's just like, you oversalted your tomatoes, and so for that you gotta go. And you're just like, oh.
Yep. I hope you like that salt because it just cost your dad his life.
Okay, let's get back to the episode. This is so crazy. So anything else about like Jasmine Fontana or anything? Because
Jasmine Fontana, I just want to say, I looked at her IMDb. One of her biggest television credits, it seems, is for The Murders of Tupac and Notorious B.I.G.
She's in that? What does she do?
Yeah. I don't know, but she's in a few episodes of it, so.
Oh, I'm interested. I'm
Yeah,
definitely interested. Let's see what she's up to.
I think Jasmine Fontana killed Tupac. So
I love that.
she must have been friends with Diddy.
My only thing is, as always, we don't really get any fleshed out characters. And I mean, like, this episode was like really short, so it didn't have to be. But like, if I had a complaint, it would be that.
Well, also too that all the female characters are there for the sake of boys.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that was a note that I took too. Like that there's a scene where they realize that like, oh, we're gonna turn this into a dating show. And then
Right.
all these girls show up at the radio station and they're like,
Could we be on the radio too and talk to boys?
and I'm like, is this how realistic is this? How much of this is just the male like imagining of like, oh yeah, the
Well,
girl.
considering the fact that Corey goes, hey, so a lot of these guys are like asking me how you kiss, and I don't think I can tell them without you giving me a little example or something like that. And her responding with, I guess I can help you out. I was like, okay, yeah.
She was
you're
that
deep.
so ridiculous. No way in real life would that ever happen. That didn't seem like Corey at all, by the way. That seemed like a Sean thing to say.
Yeah, but Corey's around Sean, and we've talked about this. When Corey feels secure, or like when he feels it, he can be kind of a Mac Daddy. Corey can do it.
But that's what I mean. Like, I guess I just don't see why Sean's so much cooler than Corey.
I think it's just because Sean accepts where he is. Like, Sean understands that he is good looking and he has the magic hair, and girls like just throw themselves at him, and this is like his thing. Corey's always questioning everything about himself. So,
Yeah, it's a
and he
confidence
always
thing.
also I believe that, remember, Sean and Eric have the hair. Corey does.
It's a hair thing.
It's the hair thing. So I really do think it's like the hair keeps Corey from believing that he's as equal or as worthy as Sean.
Sure.
Okay, so going back to the radio show, I did want to talk a little bit because
Wait. I'm sorry. Can I just do want to mention that there was one person left off of the roll call.
Who?
Mr. Robin Leach. I thought it was really funny because I realized how dated the show was when Robin Leach showed up, because I was like, no one, and like younger millennials will even understand this reference whatsoever.
I know, and that kind of made me sad. I was like, Robin Leach is such a like a '90s staple, and it makes so much sense that he would be there. And then I was like, kind of like, why is it Robin Leach and not Ed McMahon? But either way, it's just like those were so dated references. So
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about Robin Leach when he appeared, and it's just a quick note, we don't have to spend too much time on it, but he says that at the end of the episode, he shows up with this big check because of Eric's stupid magazine scheme, and he's like, "Oh, we're here for Dorothy, the neighbor who lives next
yeah, the
door."
neighbor. Yeah.
This is so we this is the episode where we learn the Matthews' other neighbor. So the Feeney's on one side, and on the other side is this Dorothy person who we've never heard from, and apparently she takes this money and runs because we never hear from her again. But I just thought that was interesting that we learned the name of another neighbor.
Oh yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, but also at the exact same time, I always wondered like, what do they do? Like, because those shows would always like just show up at someone's door, and you can't do that. Like, how do you know people's gonna be home? Maybe there's like behind the scene things where it's like it always seemed like they showed up randomly. But now that I live in LA, I know they probably showed up 2 days before and like, hey, you won, we're gonna come here, act surprised.
Or they they show up and they're like, hey, we're gonna do a run through, and now we're gonna do it again for the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what? I just don't think you could do that nowadays. Because
Well, no one's gonna be home.
well, no one's gonna be home. But also, I don't know about you, but in the same way of like, I just don't have random people knocking on my door, and so I'm not used to strangers dropping by. So unless people tell me they're coming over, I'm probably not wearing pants. Like that's just it's
No,
I'm
absolutely. I'm definitely not wearing pants most of the time that I'm home. So you're really right. And then also, I just think that now, just people just don't answer the door if they don't expect people. You know, it's just like, who are you? Like, If it's important, you'll leave. Or if you're a friend of mine, you'll call.
It's like people who answer the phone for numbers they don't recognize. I'm like, what
So
in
here's the thing.
what world?
I will say I do that, but the absolute only reason that I answer an unknown number is because my mother always loses her phone and will call me from a stranger's phone. So that is the only reason why I answer random phone numbers.
Oh, I figured that like if it's a random number, they'll leave a message if it's important. If it's not, it's probably a robot call anyway.
So let's talk about the radio show, and the reason why I want to talk about the radio show
Yeah,
is
sure.
because Feeny, like it opens up with Feeny kind of like taking control over this, and I'm like, dude, you are the principal of a school and you're a teacher. Get off the radio. You have
How does
things
he
to
have
do.
time to even mess with this? Because it seems like he's like, oh, I'm here with my groovy co-host. So
Yeah.
Feeney's doing this every morning? Is
That's
this just
what I was
morning
saying.
announcements? Because that's what I was like, what's the difference between this and morning announcements?
Well, just in general, it seemed like he was. Yeah, and for some reason, I feel like a few years later, it becomes the TV announcements. You know, it's like when everyone's doing
Yeah.
like the TV version of this. Because the idea that they have a radio show, it's just like, who's doing this? Like, who's
Well,
like, listening to this throughout the day?
And you know what's funny? I know our high school didn't have this, but I do know of other schools where, like, in between classes, they'll like play a song, a
What?
pop song or a radio
What?
song or whatever, over the speakers while kids are going through their classes.
I never heard about this.
Yeah, a few, because obviously, you know, I know a few teachers and like they've worked in schools where they've had that, and even like my friends who have kids say that like, oh, my kids say that they hear this song every day between their third and fourth period of class or whatever.
I have never heard of this in my entire life.
So
That is
yeah, so that's
crazy.
because before I got introduced to that concept through this show, thinking, oh, this is fantasy, and so when people told me, oh no, this is actually something that happens, I was blown away. Because what is distraction?
Yeah, interesting. Huh. I wonder if it
Always
has
are
like
loud
any.
enough.
Yeah, well, I wonder if it has like any, like, if there's any reason for it. Like, do students tend to go to their locker sooner and like not loiter as much if there's music in between? I don't know because like that's what we
Maybe
did
it's
in
a
between
morale
classes.
thing, but maybe it's just to make sure they get to their other class on time. Because think about it, if you have 2 minutes between classes and the song's ending, you know how long you have
Yeah.
until you need to
If
get to
Selena
class.
Gomez is ending her,
Yeah,
know, her
if you've
vocal
heard the
range.
bridge of the Selena Gomez song, you're too far. You
Yeah,
need to get.
that's my whole point. Yeah. Thank you. And then okay, so but yeah, I just thought that was weird that Feeny, and then also I was like, what's with this programming? So we have like a German hour as well.
Oh
Of
my
course
gosh!
Feeny would do
What's
this.
his name? Ludwig?
Ludwig, you know what? To be fair, we did not give Ludwig
We
his
did
due
not.
in roll call.
But Ludwig is fantastic, and one of the great things I know about Ludwig, and I don't know how I found out about this, but Ludwig was a character that Writer Strong and Ben Savage thought was hilarious, and they
What?
couldn't stop laughing at this kid's accent. They just thought it was so damn funny, and I don't know if
That is so American. For you to be
yeah,
like,
right?
Your accent's so funny. It's like I'm speaking German, and English, by the way, which means I'm multilingual and you're basic.
Yeah, but I guess something about his line delivery, and I don't know if I saw this on the TV commentary or whatever, but
That's so funny. All right, that's good to know. I like it.
but yeah, this radio show that Feeney's doing is, I don't understand
It's the
why he's
worst.
investing time. It's the worst. No one's into it.
No, and then
Makes
again,
you
as
wonder
we-
why they resurrected this radio program to begin with.
Exactly. Again, it seems to be fair. It seems like a passion project of Feeney's, just like with the enthusiasm that he has.
Yeah, and maybe this is just like he grew up only with radio. So,
Of course,
like,
to be fair, it is
radio's a
Feeney.
big deal to him.
Ooh, remember last year?
Yeah, where he
last
wanted to
season?
stay up and listen
Yes.
to the radio because
So
the president
now it
was
makes
out in the
sense.
war.
Actually, I love that you just said that. Like, so Feeney does have like a passion, and that's probably why he gets so offended when it's misused.
100% to him because
Oh wow, we just made this
said,
deeper.
yeah, because it was the episode where Alan keeps Corey up late to watch the baseball game, and he's talking about how his dad didn't let him stay up to hear Truman or whatever.
Correct.
But we're to interpret from that Feeny didn't grow up with the TV. He grew up with radio. And obviously
Exactly.
radio played a big part in his life because that's pretty much the only backstory we've heard about him and his father. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, like you said, based on his enthusiasm, that this is something he's fucking hard as hell about.
Yeah, that's actually. Oh well, I mean, Feeney's still being an old man in all his like programming, and I do look. I will say there's like a little bit of shade thrown because when he does try to connect with the youth, he's like, "And here's Menudo," and you're like, and everyone just kind of rolls their eyes. They're like, "Don't be hating on Menudo."
Well, also, Menudo seems like a strange choice
For
compared to
Feeney,
every.
yes.
Like, hey, this playlist is going to have Perry Como and Menudo? What the hell? He's all over the place.
Now, what I will say is, talking about the boys' version of the show, it's just unappreciated
Okay.
right now because Sean latches on so quickly, and Sean understands what they have here, and I kind of really like that. I like that when Sean sees an opportunity, he's like just such a entrepreneur or has like that mindset.
Well, let's not give him too much credit because if we rewind just a bit, Corey had to tell Sean, like, because Sean
Yeah.
didn't want to do anything. And Corey's like,
I mean, maybe if we became radio personalities, then we'd have personalities. I don't want to do nothing. Look, radio is just sitting around talking. Like we are now? Yeah, maybe you have to push a button. How hard? You think like this. No, I'm not sharing.
what?
Yeah. It's really funny because they show Turner's face in that clip, and it's hilarious. Just that you just get to see Turner kind of being on our side of things, like watching
Yeah.
these two interact. And he's like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Oh man, I actually thought Turner was really great in this episode. Like, this is the kind of Jonathan Turner I wish we could see more. I don't really give a shit about him with female coworkers. His stuff with Feeney is just kind of okay, but when he's connecting with the boys in the way that Feeney cannot connect with the boys, that's where he
Yes.
really shines.
Yeah,
And I thought-
I'm with you.
Yeah, I just-
I really like this version of Turner. Although I will say I do not know what's up with these ties. I kind of really want to find who's ever responsible for his wardrobe and like charging them with something because it's a crime.
I mean, don't get me wrong, these ties are miserable. But I do wonder if this is just like it's of the time. Like, maybe these are just the ties that cool
I don't
people
know.
wearing on their motorcycles in the
I watched a
1990s.
lot of Seinfeld, which is set in this time. I watched a lot of Friends, and you know who's never wearing ties and prints like this? Chandler.
David Schwimmer.
Yeah. Well, Chandler wore nothing but sweater vests, but still, point being is,
But yeah, Ross
they
Ross
don't-
would wear just plain ties.
Yeah, exactly. Like they had the same thing with as I said, Jerry Seinfeld. They're not wearing these. If you want to even go Tim the Toolman Taylor, he'll wear like the plaid that Jonathan wears, but he won't match it with like this crazy ridiculous tie. So I'm just really upset.
All right, I'm gonna pull a '90s reference out from the back of my head just because I feel that it might play a part in this. So, in the 1995, 96 movie, First Kid with Sinbad.
Yes. Yes.
Sinbad
Which, by the way,
wears- Sinbad wears he plays a bodyguard to the president's son in the movie, and they are consistently trying to get him to wear more official ties, and he's like, no, I have style, I have personality, I don't want to just wear a standard tie. I think that Jonathan Turner is that. He's like, I'm young, I'm hip, I don't want to be conformist, and I don't think it's a Woodstock hippie thing the way that Feeney made it seem. By the way, want to circle back to Woodstock.
oh, we're coming back to that joke, but keep going.
But in general, I feel like this is Turner's personality. Like, I'm not your regular teacher. And I think that even his stupid ties are just a personification of that.
Okay, you know what? I will allow that. And you brought up Sinbad, which you and I have been meaning to talk about for weeks. I have our notes
Sinbad.
that we have to talk about Sinbad. So we need to give Sinbad his due. I don't want to like squeeze him in between this. But at the exact same time, let's talk about Mr. Feeney and Ruthie Turner.
Yeah, because we just learned a lot. It's so funny because Feeney was like, "Oh, you know, you and your hippie Woodstock stuff," but then Feeney was apparently at actual Woodstock.
Apparently.
Also, how old was Feeney when Woodstock happened? Because
I have no
he
idea.
said that he heard Truman announce the end of the war. Like, how old is he?
It's a very good question. I don't know. We should do the math and like, or someone out there do the math and see how old was Feeney when Woodstock happened. Either way, I want a pre-series
It's
set,
a. Oh, go ahead. I'm
set
sorry.
in Feeney's young life where we see young George Feeney, who's like this proper kid, just go out and meet the rest of the world in the 60s and 70s, which is like all crazy sex and drugs and war, and see this George Feeney grow up and become this reserved man who has like a really worldly understanding of how
You want a
things
Feeney
are.
Begins.
I do. I want it so much right now. And then once we get that Woodstock episode, man, we're gonna have some fun. Because I
I
still
just did
see
the.
man,
I was just gonna say I just did the math, and there's only about a 25-year difference. So maybe he was like 5 or 6 or something when he was a boy, and he was like maybe around 30 or so for Woodstock, which isn't so unbelievable.
no, and
Uh,
that's what I was gonna say. I can see like a George Treaty not even like purposely going to Woodstock. Like he was on his way somewhere and like he got like a ride and he ended up at Woodstock. He was like completely not into it. He's just like so judgmental, but at the exact same time, he runs into this girl called Ruthie Turner and she's just like trying to get him to enjoy himself and some stuff goes down.
You know what's funny is that I kind of disagree with that. I feel like when Feeney was married, his former
Ah,
wife was a free spirit. I get that vibe. I get that vibe
ooh,
a lot of times throughout the series that when he goes, there's one episode in particular coming up, I think maybe next season, um at a lodge, that at a snow cabin that Feeney had up in the mountains, where they find an
yeah,
old
I know
diary and
exactly
talking
what you're
about his
talking
life.
about.
Yeah. But there's something about Feeney that makes me think that the reason he's so conservative has to do more with just him not having any like of that joy in his life that he used to have with what I imagine to be a very free spirited wife.
Ah, still, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, we've come up with several ways to have prequels to this series,
Yeah.
and I want them all. I really do. So maybe one day I'll write one, and
Yeah,
I
just
know a
like
couple
why
people
we've
know right
had a
now.
sequel. We've had Girl Meets World, we've had Boy Meets World. Like we need Man Meets World, I guess, would
Exactly.
be
Feeny Meets World.
Feeny Meets World. Yeah, because honestly, I feel like Feeny would have more this prequel idea that we're for sure going to send to ABC. Would have like a
Exactly.
Wonder Years type of quality to it.
Yes. And we already
Oh
love
wow.
Mr. Feeney. We would all, again, we learned his lessons that he learns that he eventually tells the boys. It's all right there. Why are we not doing this? I want it now.
Oh wow! All right, guys. Well, this is being recorded. People can't see all this. So we're gonna roll with this. We're gonna have to figure out this elevator pitch and make this happen.
Yeah, all right. So, going back to the episode, like I said, I love Sean's energy when he like sees what's going on because he basically understands that this dude called in to try to get with Sarah, and he's like, "Dude, are you gonna drop?" It's like just the whole energy that Sean has, and even Turner mentions it a little later. He's like, they don't get involved or into much, and they were really into this.
It's interesting though that like whatever Sean seems to get excited about is things that someone else has to shut down very quickly. And I
Of
wonder
course.
if it's because Sean hasn't found his own avenue yet, or is it that it's because it's off limits that it gets Sean excited?
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's if we're being honest, I think it's one of those things where it's like Sean understands he understands his peers and he understands kind of like this counterculture thing. But most of this show is about how you have to not conform, but like understanding how the world itself is right now. You know, the structures that we have in the world as they are. And I think that that's all where Sean always comes into conflict, because Sean is kind of this free spirit who understands what his peers want, and it's always outside of like what adults find they should be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I think it's way more about that than it is about, you know, Sean getting off on it being forbidden. I don't think the forbidden thing has anything to do with it. I think it's just Sean understands.
Well, I don't know. I think things are.
The forbidden thing has a little to do with it, but it's just not the primary thing, is what I'm saying.
Siege, you're the one who told me when we started this conversation that white men consistently want what they can't have.
Also very true. Also very true. So I mean,
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you're right. I think that Sean seems to find his avenues, and it's just unfortunate that it happens to collide with what society wants for him. But I think he kind of gets off on that a little bit.
exactly. Well, I mean, but like also like I mean, think about it. Mr. Turner even kind of points out that the boys just like he's like they of course they didn't have adult supervision. So like what they did of course wasn't ideal, but I don't think they should have everything taken away from them.
It
And
didn't seem
with
as
the
if they
proper
had
guidance.
any. Yeah, it didn't seem like they had any rundown. It seems like they just like showed up and were like, "All right, we're doing this." They told us we can only talk about the bake sale, but they didn't seem to give them any other parameters as far. Well,
Exactly. It is funny to see them have to fight for like their right to speak up and all this other stuff, and the conflict with the radio show. When I realized that we're doing our own podcast, and I was like, yeah, now they could just do a podcast. They could just
Yeah.
they could set up their own podcast or their own YouTube series, and it would be just as much of a hit, and the school wouldn't be able to say anything.
Can you
And
imagine if we were in high school and had a podcast about all the drama that was happening in high school and like actually
yes,
like
I can
oh
imagine
my goodness,
because
that's a movie.
and by the way, that's literally the plot of Gossip Girl. So
Is it? Okay. I don't
literally.
watch it, so.
You should. Gossip Girl is amazing. So, just putting that out there.
So back-
Okay. Oh, also for me, I think like even listening to it, I was like, they didn't really do much that was wrong. I think where the boys really messed up was when they said like the bathing suit thing. I was like, okay, that is overboard, and that's the part where Feeney came in on. You know what I mean? Like trying to hook people up. It's like it's not that terrible, but I don't think it would have been as bad if they weren't like she likes to go fishing in like nothing but a bikini, and then Feeney's like, all
Yeah.
right, this is basically smut. So.
I had a quick note here about just like, for whatever reason, I don't know how much the budget was on this show, but obviously they're not spending a nickel of it on copyrighted music, because whenever there's like music that needs to be played in such generic rock
Yeah.
and roll or generic like video game elevator pop music or whatever, like it's so awful. Like not I mean from a I don't want to knock
Yeah, I get what you're
music for
saying.
the show,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying like they can't spend a nickel on a damn whatever pop song that's on the radio. It just seems like to me there's so much pop music in television nowadays that it's almost inescapable. Like I'm gonna hear some shitty pop song on the Grey's Anatomy episode or whatever.
Correct.
Whereas then it just seemed like it wasn't even a consideration.
Well,
so
the
I just thought that was
music
interesting.
the music industry was completely different, and now they need to like in order because no one listens to the radio anymore, ironically. So because no one listens to the radio,
Yeah,
they
you're right.
put all the music into these shows that everyone's watching because that's how you discover new music.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that totally makes sense. All right, no, never mind. You just answered my question.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this Bill of Rights thing and who decides who has good taste.
Well, I wrote that as a note too, just about their messaging regarding freedom of speech. Um, I don't really know. It's freedom of speech with responsibility is the theme of the
Yes.
show. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what the theme of this episode is supposed to be, and that's one thing that, like, again, Boy Meets World does really. They bring up a really good subject, but they don't really go into it the way that they should. If you want people to walk away with the understanding that you assume they want. Which is to say that in this episode, they bring up the fact that the boys are always talking about the First Amendment and their freedom to say whatever they want. And, Turner's like, no, you don't just get to say whatever you want. First of all, this is school property. Second of all, there are people to answer to. And third of all, it's just like there's responsibility that comes with this platform. And maybe
I think that's a good lesson
correctly.
I think that's a good lesson for children to learn that freedom, because I would imagine as a 13-year-old, freedom of speech to me means I can just say whatever I want. I can call anyone any name I want. It's learning that there is responsibility and consequences, I feel, is a good lesson that kids should learn. I think they do a good job of at least portraying that. Yeah.
See, and I disagree. I disagree with the fact that I think they do a good job. I think that the lesson itself is there, but the lesson itself is there for adults who knows what they're trying to say. If you're a kid, it's not blatant. It's definitely, it's convoluted. There's no real connection to the fact that the boys, it's way more of the boys violated Turner's agreement than it is the boys understanding that there are consequences to having freedom of speech. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that bothered me. It's like you brought it up, but you don't really tell that. It's not in the text. Because I'm an adult, I see where you were going with it, but it's not really there. So
I wonder how much of this is just also the issue of time constraint of
Yes.
It's 22 minutes or whatever the episode is. I'm sure that, I don't know, maybe I'm giving them a little too much credit, but maybe it is this issue of them. No, you know what? I take it back immediately because they waste so much of the episode on this stupid Eric storyline that has nothing to do with anything. Why have a B story if it doesn't support the other stories? Just get rid of it. We can have just a solo story episode. In fact, those tend to be the better Boy Meets World episodes when the show doesn't get so unfocused and all over the place.
I'm glad that you made that 360, because what I was going to say is we see them do it. We see them do it all the time. Not all the time, but when they do it, we always notice it and we always applaud those episodes. Because those episodes where they don't waste a single second and everything is just, you're like, wow, this was really tight and it got me exactly what I wanted to get, and the lesson's really clear and everyone's use of time is purposeful. That is great. And this was not one of those episodes, and it could have been, in my opinion.
You know what? I will say probably the biggest takeaway and the most lasting thing of the show is, unfortunately, Eric's B storyline.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that has any continuality outside of this episode is him being dumb. We never see this radio show again. Nope. I don't even know if we hear from this German kid or even Alvin again.
Ludwig.
Ludwig, we never hear from Ludwig again. So yeah, it's unfortunate that the most impactful thing about this episode just happened to be the weakest part of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say that, and you're right. I think that the tail end when they're talking to the boys are when Turner has unknowingly put the boys on air, and they're talking about the fact that they feel the need, that they feel lost, and they feel the need to find themselves and all this other stuff. And, the whole school responds to it. That's a good lesson. And that's something that they do really well. But again, that's different from the First Amendment conversation. So you get these two very disjointed things, which is that, A, you don't need to sell sex in order to get an audience is one thing. But another conversation is First Amendment rights and the power that comes with a platform.
Yeah, I can see why the focus on both of those was a little too much. All right, so we talked about this kind of learning point of the show where Jonathan is talking to the boys at the radio station. He's like, why do you guys feel the need to do this? And they're like, because we want to be special. And Jonathan turns on the radio without the boys knowing.
Yeah.
So we learned about freedom of speech, but we really didn't learn about privacy.
Yeah, again, that's what I'm saying. There are just moments where they're not teaching the lessons that they need to be.
Turner's a hypochondriac because he's talking about how important free speech is, But he also is not respecting these boys' privacy at all. Has a super deep, revealing conversation with these boys talking about their insecurities, and he's broadcasting it to the entire school without their knowledge. And they kind of gloss over it. Like Sean's like, the whole school heard this, and Turner's like, it doesn't matter. People like it. But no, it kind of does matter. That could have been a very scarring thing. Like, he had no idea what Corey and Sean were going to say.
I completely agree with that.
And that could have been just as dangerous.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I was like, that could have been anything. They could have used foul language. They could have said, they could have confessed something really, really personal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you on that because it is kind of messed up, and it was a very risky move. And of course, because it's television, we're supposed to forgive it and just kind of move forward. Okay, do you have anything else you want to say about this episode?
Yeah, I do have one thing. One, there's a moment that I find really hilarious, and it's when Feeny actually finds the boys from their pirate radio station.
Oh, okay.
And Sean has this great line where he's like,
"Don't move. Maybe he doesn't see us."
And since I was a kid, I remember cracking up anytime I saw this episode when Sean said that. I just thought it was such a dumb, funny thing to say. But here's something else about this whole chase scene where Feeny's looking for them. Do the boys have a camera?
Yes, because I was thinking the same thing.
Because at one point, they're like, oh, we might be in the bathroom. And then Feeny goes to look in the bathroom. And the moment he looks in the bathroom, they're like, psych, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah,
wait, are you watching him? How do you know this?
It's supposed to be one of those things where it's just like, it's all knowing, but not really. They're just speaking. But it is, for me, the thing that's funny about that scene, because I did have the same thought, but the thing that's funny about that scene is when Sean accidentally reveals where they are.
So where's the thief? Go. Behind the bucket's janitor's mom's. Go. Or is that a fake clue? Because we couldn't possibly be that stupid.
Oh, I think you're much more stupid than you give yourselves credit for.
Yeah, Sean is. It's so funny because I'm not really. They're still in this weird part of the show where Sean and Eric are both done. And I think that's something we'll see for like the next season or so. And then Sean starts to get, once Angela gets in the picture, he starts to get so brooding. And so, like, his stuff with his parents starts to go down. And he just turns into a completely different,
well, to be fair, when your life starts to spiral the way his does, you start getting a little bit broody and a little less.
For sure. That's a fair point. But yeah, it's just an exchange of attributes between Sean and Eric. Yeah. We're in the beginning phases of it.
Okay, so Feeny taught me. What do you got?
Feeny taught me, I think, is this lesson that Turner tries to teach them, that he broadcasts to the entire school without their consent, which is that, just being genuine is the greatest way to make a human connection. And I do think that that's something that we're seeing in politics. We're seeing it with our entertainers. We're seeing it, I think, across the board, is that people want a more authentic experience with people, not so much something that's flashy or something that's a good story. They'd rather have something that's just true. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Because Sean goes, I think it's Sean or Corey, it's like, yeah, but nobody wants to talk about that. And he's like, well, contrary. I mean, like, look at the phones. Everyone kind of feels that way. And we're starting to relearn that lesson of people just really want someone to be real with them. I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with people who voted for number 45 who were like, but he was just so authentic. And it's just like, okay, but I mean, that's what they were looking for. And so that is something to just take into account.
Man,
I know. We're not going down that road. I'm just letting you know.
All right.
Okay. So that being said, what grade are you giving this?
I'm giving this episode a B. I think it's an enjoyable episode. I don't think it's particularly important in the show for any of the characters other than Eric that we mentioned. But I you know what? B plus. A B plus. It's a funny episode. I do think that the lesson is a lesson that's actually worth teaching, whereas a lot of the episodes we've gone over recently have been like, what lesson are they trying to give out? That doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be something that's taught to kids. So yeah, B plus.
All right, so I'm gonna give it a full letter grade lower than you, which is a C plus. And it's literally just because of everything we talked about. I feel like the lessons are all over the place. I feel like it's funny, but we have a lot of stuff with Eric that's unnecessary. And I just don't think like everyone's used the way that they could be. Also, we get no Topanga. We don't really get like a turned on by Turner moment. So,
you didn't get turned on by Turner this episode.
I didn't get. I mean, it's, so I guess now we're doing it.
No, I mean it's don't force it.
No,
if it didn't
happen, I don't know. You're right. It's not the force it. I'm just saying.
For Turner.
Lip dick for Turner. No, honestly, it was just. I will say that he wore those blue jeans nicely, but I hated everything else with it, so it didn't turn me on. Just saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is it. Homework. What do you got?
I'm going to make my homework for this week a movie called Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It's on Amazon Prime. This is another horror movie. I know I recommended one last week as well, but this is such an amazing deconstruction of the horror genre. And I haven't seen one do it this well since maybe Scream. Because it truly, what it is just like, it's one of the, like an Office, Parks and Rec, like a documentary style, maybe more Blair Witch, I guess would be the vibe they're going for, of a serial killer preparing for a kill. So it's if you can imagine Jason Voorhees like beforehand being like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit of cardio to get warmed up because this is how I get ready to do things, and they're gonna go into the shed, but I'm gonna try to sabotage some of these weapons so when they come after me, I'm prepared. Like, it's just so creative and interesting, and I just was really blown away by the lead actor's performance. And if you like Scream and you like the deconstruction of the horror genre, like, this is a great movie. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called The Rise of Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask. I think it's 2006 is the year. But yeah, really great. Robert Englund's in it as well. So if you like, for some good old Freddy vibes, he plays the Dr. Loomis character, the one who's trying to catch the serial killer. But yeah, it's a great movie. So if you're interested, check it out.
Okay, wow. That's really great. So the thing that I'm going to recommend this week is this YouTube series called After Hours by Cracked. It's just always good. They talk about a lot of pop culture the way we do, and they just kind of analyze things. There's the one who told me about that whole horror reflecting the common fears of the time and the vampires and the zombie thing. So it's a series that they don't do anymore, unfortunately, but there are plenty of episodes from there. So again, that's Cracked After Hours. It's really, really good. It's one of my favorite ones, and I just thought it would be fun. And then my other homework is, as always, make sure you're registered to vote and that you are prepared to vote, because we need to do all of those things.
Yeah, we're getting close, guys. We're getting real close.
It's Okay.
And it could go either way, guys. Don't let anyone fool you. It can go either way.
And that is like, I think that's one of the most depressing truths. Because it's just like, even with everything that's happened, it can always still go either way. So
just get out there, guys.
So thank you for listening to R&B's World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all of the places. Make sure you leave us a rating or that you reply to us. We love when you give us feedback on social medias. And to do that, at @BrugMeetsWorld, or email us at brugmeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Siege. That's XTRACEEJ. Tonathy.
You can find me at @BraverMe on Instagram. You can also find me at the Pumpkin Patch, waiting for that great pumpkin, yo.
Oh, yeah.
He's coming.
Actually, I didn't do this year because this year I did the Scream banner, but I usually do the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown banner on my Facebook page, because I just love that. Like, I just love the little boy believing in the Great Pumpkin.
Can we also have a horror movie version of the Great Pumpkin? Like, can we have this?
Yes, let's do this.
Yeah, Guys,
You know
we're,
what? I don't know what's going on. You and I are like, we should be in pitch meetings.
our creative energy is sprouting all kinds of juices, guys. I hope we're not spraying it in the face because this is intense.
But you know what I do want you guys to do? I want you to remember to dream, try, and do some good. Do some good. Later, bros.
Later, bros.